Hello, I'm going to take you through a small training course to show just the capabilities of the HoloLens with 3D models and being able to do training scenarios outside of the field and outside of the health and safety area in a home office where you can spend time without having to either travel to or have to deal with the health and safety issues. So the first thing we'll do is we'll look at the 3D model, and I've got this 1 meter square refrigeration purge unit model that I've already produced, and we'll just fire this up. There it is. What I've done is I've actually scaled the unit so at least I can fit it into the space that I'm dealing with. And as I go through, as you can see where I'm looking, the item will turn blue. So for example, if I click this vessel, up comes 97. At the moment I haven't linked this into the back-end database, but item 97 will eventually tell you that it's the purge vessel. Now what I'm really interested in is this gauge board. So what we'll do is we'll make this a bit bigger so it's a lot easier to see. And we'll just scale it just by using hand gestures. And in fact what we'll do is we'll lift this whole model up so that I can actually see things in a bit more detail. Now this 3D model has come straight out of the AutoCAD or AutoCAD plant system, and as you can see there's no color on it, but it gives you the idea of the 3D model, and I can actually look around the different components, see what's behind the gauge board just by looking through the glasses, not having to do anything else. But what I want to do is I want to do a training course based on this particular pressure gauge. I want to teach someone how, using this block and bleed valve, we can safely remove the pressure gauge. So what I've done now is I've put a Microsoft Edge or an internet browser onto the wall here, and again it's actually fixed to the wall, and going around the side you can actually see the thickness of it. If I don't like where it is, I can actually just pick it up from here and I can adjust it wherever I want, but we'll leave it back there. It's a good place. Then what I'll do is I'm going to fire up a website that I've got that's dealing with the gauge replacement information I'm looking at. Now obviously this is going to be as detailed as you need. It may be looking into a document management system, but I've got 3 simple documents. I've got one, I have a procedure for doing a gauge replacement. So I'm going to click the procedure. It's a PDF file, so the PDF file will actually load into the system. And now I can deal with it. I'm looking elsewhere, but the procedure is still going to be on the wall. And as I go to the procedure, I can actually scroll up and see exactly what the information is, see what the process is. So this can be a standard document, this can be a standard process. So that's the first thing that I can use. The second thing, I have a P&ID of the unit. Again, here's the P&ID. So what I can do is I can actually use the controls. Again, it's just a standard PDF. But I can use the controls to be able to go into and scroll around the document however I need to see it. And the last thing I want to do is I want to look at the general arrangement drawing, which was created during the design phase, so I know what the design information was. As I scroll up, I should be able to move this out the way. Oh, I'm going too quickly. There we go. I'm scrolling up. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. This here is the gauge board for that particular unit, and it shows me all the information I need to see. Okay, so I know I've got all my documentation, I've put it on the wall, I've got everything that I need to look at from a process, from a standard, from a health and safety, and from a design information point of view. So, information and design information, procedural information, standard information on the wall. And here I've just loaded up the gauge board model. Let me click it and it comes in front of me. So again, I have the ability using this menu here to resize it, change its shape, change where it's actually located. I'm going to leave it where it is for the time being. And here is the gauge that I'm actually looking for. It's a pressure gauge. It's connected via the pipework to a block and bleed valve which goes onto the system. And as you can see, it's very similar to what the design information was in the standards and the GAs. So the first thing I know, my procedure tells me that I need to be able to change the valve and move the valve handle so that I isolate this whole system from the remaining pressured system. So I click on the valve changes, and up comes a piece of information telling me that the valve is now isolated from the system. However, the valve has not been de-energized. The pressure that the system was seeing is still the same pressure that's now trapped within the pipework between the gauge and the valve. So the process now tells me that I need to be able to bleed the information off. And so by changing the bleed valve, the line has now been bled, and what happens is the gauge actually comes down because the pressure has been reduced within this piece of pipework. The process now tells me that I can remove this gauge and replace it with another gauge. So this is a training scenario. So what happens if I try and open up the valve without isolating first? It tells me you can't do it because the bleed valve is open. So we need to be able to close the bleed valve. Then we need to be able to pressurize it and open it to the system. We get a message telling us that it's available, and the gauge goes back to the pressure as seen by the system.